Welcome to Monologs, audio commentary on Musicalfungus. I'm Corey Luna, and with me is Rich Hogben.
Hey.
And we're going to skip through a few scenes with Musicalfungus and talk about a little bit about what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, let's see. We have a few scenes that didn't make the edit that we wanted to share. So the first one, it's he's discussing Banana Jacks, which we did share on social media a little bit, but we wanted to make sure that got in here because it was pretty interesting. And then we go into his studio, and he is kind of going over his one of his Buchla systems. I think mostly the Easel. And then he switches over to the Serge and another Buchla, right?
Yeah, it was talking about. Is that no? It's only two. So two Buchlas.
I think there's the Easel, and then there was another one on top of the Serge. We'll check when we get there. And then then he talks about the sort of like add-on card or the cartridge for the Easels. That was pretty interesting. And then he has two of his sort of custom-made Lorre Mill devices, right? So
that's right.
We'll end with those two. So yeah, let me start up this first part where he gets into kind of banana jack mode. Here we go.
The big thing though with Buchla was that he split the cables, so all of the control voltage travels over banana jack, and all the audio signal travels over tiny jack, which is similar to an 1/8 inch, but it's a little bit different. So it's not like Eurorack where you can use one cable for everything. In Buchla, everything that's a control voltage uses banana jack, and everything that's audio uses tiny jack. And unless you make a tiny jack to banana jack converter, you can't do like audio modulation the same. Like you can't send like a CV source into an audio jack like you can in Eurorack. But there was a reason he did that, because with AC and DC, primarily using DC voltage for control voltage and AC voltage for audio. And when you try and send AC into like a DC input, sometimes nothing happens, or vice versa. And so to make sure that you weren't just like plugging things in and be like, why doesn't this do anything? He's like, okay, let's put everything that's DC on banana cables and everything that's DC on
professor I've been missing in my life.
Yeah, I liked that this was happening while we were, setting up and stuff. And I'm glad we were at least most of the time trying to have the cameras always recording, even through setup or through breaks and stuff. Because you get these little moments that this wasn't an interview question or something, right? It was just happened.
I think we were just testing the audio, and I just gave him a question, and it was a bigger, in-depth answer than I had anticipated.
Right.
It was fascinating to listen to.
Right. Yeah, I know that was pretty popular when we shared that on social media.
Yeah. I think it's really cool because unless you're getting into playing Buchla, you would not know that at all. And it sounds so different and much more difficult than Eurorack.
Right. Like it makes sense. I mean, at that time, it's like you got to make a decision. Like, how do I make this as user-friendly as possible? Well, so that people aren't plugging in the wrong cables, we'll have these two kind of designated cables versus like, let's just make everything sort of, work no matter where you plug it into. CV into audio into CV, like who cares? Is it? Yeah. Okay, so the next one is he is going in the studio, and we're looking at the I think the Buchla, I think the Easel. He talks a little bit about that. Let's see, get it going
here. This is kind of where my main interests are. Is a lot of the older format. Not that any of my stuff is original per se, but here we've got my Buchla Music Easel. And this is from 2015, when Buchla was owned by Buchla Electronic Musical Instruments, different than Buchla USA, who owns them today. So they don't come like this exactly any longer. The new Buchla USA, Buchla Command, they're all slightly different. But I love this. A lot of people give this time frame of Buchla a bad rap because at the time, BMI, Buchla Electronic Musical Instruments, were kind of known for not having the greatest quality control. A lot of people had a lot of issues, but I seem to luck out because I have used this every day since, I think 2015, maybe 2016 when I got it, and I have really never had a serious problem with it. So I got really lucky. But I knew some other people from that, that got some from that time frame that they weren't the best. But yeah, I love this. Like I said, use it every day. It's one of my main kind of go-to synths when I want to do something quick and just get an idea out. Probably mainly because it actually has a keyboard I can play versus everything else is sequencer based. So if I really have a melody in my head, I want to get out quickly and sort out, see if it works. This is something I can do quickly since it does actually have a keyboard.
Yeah. You could tell through parts of this, I was like wrangling that massive camera on my shoulder.
How heavy is that camera?
It's not that heavy, but it's just, I'm out of shape, man. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, there's definitely parts where I'm like fumbling around with like reseating it or whatever. But yeah, anyways, the Buchla easels are pretty cool. Have you played on one before?
I have not. Like when I was starting getting into more Eurorack, I was looking at Buchla at the same time because I've known about it. But again, because of the price tag differences, I went with Eurorack over Buchla.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I knew I would be sinking like $4,000 easy just to start in Buchla.
Right. And so that what he said here was interesting, that like he got lucky that he hasn't had many problems with his, but because of some maybe quality control issues, I guess other people have had issues with it. And I mean, imagine putting that money into it and now you're sort of like, you're not playing this thing, you're repairing it and upkeeping it, and it becomes this whole other deal.
I think that goes to because all the original Buchla music easels were custom made.
Right. Yeah, it's a commitment then to like go down that route and be like, this is what I'm gonna kind of commit to.
Yeah, it was designed to be an artist's tool for an easel.
Cool. Okay, so the next one, he goes straight into the Serge. I think a little bit about. I think there's another Buchla system up there. And this one's a little longer, so we'll see how it goes. If you want to pause, just, cut in and I can pause and we can talk around. Okay, here we go.
But moving over, we have got, this is my main Buchla system outside of the Easel. I had the Easel first and acquired this piece by piece over a few years. But this is really kind of a basic 4-voice Buchla system. It's got 2 dual oscillators, so 4 oscillators in total, 4 voices. It's got 4 envelopes. It's got 4 VCAs and 4 filters. And then we've got a voltage processor, random voltage source, and a mixer. So it's really everything you need to handle 4 separate voices. And then feeding into that, which is beneath this spaghetti of cables, is the multiple arbitrary function generator, model 248, also known as the MARF. This is a clone that was built for me by a very skilled clone builder from the company Modular Express. His name is Bill Lyons.
So I was just going to say, I was trying to find the angle because I think some of this part you had recorded.
Yeah.
But I'd only found like a few short clips. There weren't like any like long running. I think in a couple of these I panned down, but yeah, unfortunately I have a lot of him pointing at stuff that we can't see. So
he's a fantastic builder. He actually also built me this quad function generator model 281. He also built me this quad low pass gate model 292C. So great guy who makes great clones. Luckily, Buchla has a very diverse and really big community of people that are making clones. So if you are looking for the vintage modules that are no longer actually made, you can get someone to build a clone for you.
Okay, so the Buchla's system up there were clone modules. That's right. The deal, right? So there was like the Easel, and then this was the other system of sort of new clones.
Yeah, so those are like the extra modules you can get to patch into your Easel.
Right. Okay. And then he had the Serge system, the MARF underneath it. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, the MARF is fantastic. It would really require a 3-day course to understand everything that's going on. If not, then I've been using this daily for 2 years, and I still learn things constantly. The MARF is really most famous, or made most famous by Suzanne Ciani. It's the heart and soul of her entire system. Everything that she does is based around what the MARF can do, manipulating time, voltage, quantization, any of that stuff. So yeah, the MARF, the Model 248, really kind of most famously known or well known, being used by Suzanne Ciani. It's the heart and soul of her whole operation, because it allows her to really use it as a quad sequential switch, where she feeds in 4 separate 16-step sequences into the 4 external inputs. And using these sliders, she actually picks on each step what of those 4 sequences she's playing. And these 4 sequences play together very well. They're very harmonically related. So she can create and craft whole new sequences out of picking and choosing individual notes out of 4 different 16-step sequences that are all playing. So she can interact and interweave these, all, in this sea of kind of melody and harmony, which not a lot of other stuff allows you to do that. There's a lot of people in kind of the VCC or VCV rack world that have kind of recreated the MARF out of a lot of various other modules, but it's really unique in what it is. Nothing in.
I think here I was thinking, what would be cool if I had the doorway? Like, do you see the door on the left? It's like out of focus. like I'm like, oh, what if I looked in, peeking in like through because it was very tight there, like in that corner.
Yeah.
And I kind of backed up into the hallway. But the issue was, and I forgot, but now I'm remembering, when I backed up too much, his dogs were outside near the pool, and then they could see me, and then they'd start barking. So I'd have to like step back into the room so that they weren't barking over the audio.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had this whole thing going during this time where I was like trying to stay out of line of sight of the dog, but giving myself enough room to film through the doorway. Okay.
Eurorack exists until Buchla and Tip Top finally decided to make the MARF, which we'll see if they do that or not. But since its release in, I'm gonna say 1973, because Suzanne Ciani was using it in 75. I can't know the exact date, but really since then, nothing has
to add
really
on
existed
to the
like it.
small room. I also had a difficult time getting shots of him from the back because it's such a small room, and then there's that big bed.
Yeah,
and I really didn't have any space to back up.
Right, because this is his office, studio / guest bedroom. So there's the bed there for when a guest is over, and then he has his desk set up for work and everything that you were sort of backed into. And then we were mostly facing, the studio that's along that side of the wall. So yeah, there was only one place for you to stand, and there was really only one place for me to stand. And that was there was no trying to decide some other place to go that. That was kind of it.
Yeah, we just had those two angles to work with.
Right.
Which is why I was so, why I was so sought after getting a clone of it that actually works. A lot of people over the years in kind of the Buchla community have been working to implement and make changes to the firmware so that it can really function as close to the original that Don built, which Don only built so many of them. I don't know the exact number, but it's very small. Maybe 10. I could totally be wrong with that, but he stopped making them because one of them died on him in the middle of a performance that he was doing, and it just became kind of notoriously unreliable, and so he just stopped making them. So now really the only way to get them is through the cloning market. But yeah, as mentioned, it's really too complex to dive into exactly what it's doing, but it's more or less two 16-step sequencers that have very intricate ways of interconnecting and interacting with each other. And also the ability to control the time of every single step. So while you are moving sequentially through your 16 steps, or not sequentially, as you can see now, it's randomly going through, this bottom row can actually control your time so that rather than a constant, even though you're sending a constant clock into it, you can actually use these sliders to more or less divide the time on each step. So you can create kind of non-linear sequences and sequences that kind of stumble through time, staying on some steps longer than others. You can shorten some of them to 0.002 of a second up to 30 seconds, and then you can multiply that 30 seconds by a factor of 4. So realistically, you can have each step be 0.002 of a second all the way up to, I believe, roughly 2 minutes per step in a sequence. So, and then having the ability to change those sliders in real time, your sequencing capabilities are really quite endless. You can also create internal loops so that when it gets to a certain point, we'll then actually loop between, point A and point B. And then you can exit that loop and go to another loop. So you can actually, even though it's 16 steps, you don't have to use it as 16 steps. You could turn this into, a 4-step sequence that then using control voltage, you could switch over to a separate 4-step sequence where it's only using, 4 of the 16 steps, like let's say 1 through 4. And then I can program steps 5 through 8 to be a separate 4-step sequence, and I can jump back and forth between the two. So you can do a lot of really intricate things. As long as you have the necessary control voltage to control it. But it's my favorite sequencer I've ever played with. While it would work with the Serge panel.
So in this angle that you're shooting at, you're in that door frame and you've got your camera angled down looking at the MARF. Yeah,
but most of my shots in this room were along this horizontal wall, parallel with this wall, and either pointed up at him or down along the gear, because since everything was sort of in a line, I tended to get a better kind of sense of depth you could see sort of from one system to the next one. That was like my best shot in here. But yeah, that's what we're pointed at right now. That's the MARF. And then those other, I think the Buchla clones. So yeah, he's still sort of going over the sequencer.
Right.
Would work to sequence Eurorack if I wanted to. Using some jumpers on the back, you can change whether or not you're getting 1 volt, 1.2, or 2 volts out of these sliders. So you can use them with different systems, but kind of as I was mentioning earlier, really liking to, I don't know, I guess kind of a bit of a purist in wanting to keep my systems in the same manufacturers. I really only use the MARF to sequence this Buchla case or the Easel. And then kind of last in the line here, which is also the most recent of my synth collection, acquired this 2 years ago. So I haven't added anything to the collection for the last 2 years because the collection really, in my opinion, is complete. I kind of have my tool belt. I have got my kit. I got my arsenal of all the sounds I might want to create. And
that was one of my favorite lines from the from the video. There's definitely like specific, like lines where you're like, oh, that sounds really cool. But I like how he described it, like his arsenal, his toolkit, like having all those. Yeah, go ahead.
Since he feels comfortable with the collection that he has, he doesn't need to add too much more. He's enjoying the sounds he's creating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a point we all strive to get to, like where you've made the decision that you really don't need anything else. Because that's hard.
Yeah.
That's a difficult, hard thing to do.
I think we're all searching for our own sound.
Right.
This was kind of the last piece of that. And it was really more so just because I love the history of Serge so much. And just what he did for synthesizers, that I really wanted to have a Serge piece. Was in no means to afford an original, classic Serge panel built by Serge himself. But Serge, all of their circuits are available through open source to build yourself. And so there's a really, really fantastic company. They go by Loudest Warning, located out of the UK. And he makes completely custom 17-inch panels. So the Serge always kind of came in a very set design size of 17 inches. So it could fit into an 18-inch rack case with the 1-inch, kind of rack ears on them. What I really, really like about Serge is just the flexibility of it. So kind of the way that Serge started was he, from what I heard, he was going to Cal Arts, which is where a lot of the big Buchla systems were at the time. But they had long waiting lists. You had to wait a long time to actually get time with the Buchla. So he started to build his own synthesizer. And what he did was, a lot of the stuff in the Buchla is very complex. Like this here, the 266, the model, the source of uncertainty, model 266, is a random voltage generator that has a lot of different types of random voltage. It's got fluctuating random voltage, quantized random voltage, stored random voltage, has a sample and hold. It's got a noise source. It has a lot of stuff built into this panel. But the kind of normal consumer doesn't know what is actually making this random voltage fluctuate versus what is a quantized random voltage versus a stored random. Like, what is the difference between those? Like, you have the ability to change the settings, but you're still kind of limited to what Don designed the source of uncertainty to do. And the Serge philosophy was he really wanted to break down the modules into the most simple building blocks that you could possibly do. So he took all the outside, or what was on the inside of Buchla, and took it to the outside into simplified circuits, like little working blocks of modules that you would then have to, self-patch between each other to actually create what quantized random voltages are. So in Serge, there's not necessarily a quantized random voltage module. Well, there is, it came later. But if you wanted quantized random voltages, you would have to figure out using the building blocks, the 2 or 3 building blocks of what's going on in there and patch it up yourself. So it was really more of a teaching synthesizer. It taught you what was going on behind the panel in these more complicated, primarily Buchla modules. And he really stripped it down, but in my opinion, in his process of doing that, also made it much more complicated, because now you've got all these little things that do very specific jobs, and you really have to get an understanding and build a relationship with the Serge synthesizer, unlike a lot of other synths, to really grasp the kind of full capability of what it can do. The one big thing in Serge is kind of the...
He says that you have to build a relationship with the Serge.
Yeah, because like every little module became so specific that you just have to know every little tiny thing, right? To kind of be able to use it.
Yeah, it's like every piece you have to know exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's very intricate.
Mm-hmm.
Self-patching, like this one module here, the dual universal slope generator, similar to Maths and Eurorack, is really a Swiss Army. If you patch this within itself, it can be one of 20 different modules, when realistically, all it is a slope generator. It's just an attack decay. It's just a signal going up and it's a signal going down, and you can make that loop or you can have it be triggered. But depending on how you patch it within itself, it could be a slew generator, it could be a low pass gate, it could be a filter. You could really turn it into anything. And when you really start looking into Serge, you start realizing that everything is just really a slew generator or a function generator. Everything in the Serge is more or less a circuit that just sends voltage up and lets that voltage come back down. And through self-patching, you can really get some complex sounds, tones, and textures. But what I really love about this synth is Serge went through a lot of changes in the way that it looked over the years. And the original ones, to make them the most cost-efficient as possible, they were called paperface. And so it was a blank metal panel with all the holes pre-drilled. They were in a grid spacing, and you would then print out a piece of paper or write with hand or whatever what everything did and lay that over the panel. And it had a very specific key to the symbols, the symbolism on the graphics to tell you if it was an input or an output and things like that. And I really love the paperface look, and especially now because the paper that was used is all yellow and old. The original ones, they look vintage. They look stained with smoke, and like they have this really great look, this yellow tint to them because the paper is 40 years old. But when I got this designed, when I was working with Loudest Warning, because like I said, everything in here is custom from left to right. I told him I wanted paperface, and he's like, yeah, I can do paperface. But in the end, because the paperface is a little more susceptible to damage and things like that, because it is a piece of paper which some lacquer over it, I ended up going with the aluminum faceplate, but I still asked for the paperface graphics. And to make things even more cryptic, I asked him to remove all the module names and about 75% of the panel graphics. So most people, when they look at this, and I'll show it to you later with all the banana cables out, if you're looking at this, unless you know the color coding of what the jacks are, it's pretty cryptic as to what's an input, what's an output, which I really like. I always joke around that me and Charlie, the guy that built it, are the only ones that really know what every in and out on here actually is, which I really like. I think that just makes it more that much more special to me, that someone can look at it and be like, I have no idea how that works, but I have a complete understanding of exactly what every knob and input and output does. So I really love this synth.
That's some character.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I think I ran out of gas here. I just threw the camera on the ground, but he had it. There was a soundbite here. It was really good.
Oh, I could talk for hours about this stuff. The best thing about it is I sequenced this amazing Serge with this crappy Korg SQ1 when I have a MARF sitting right above it.
That's so funny.
I actually really like this. I like the fact that you can turn steps on and off. Like right now, it's phasing between a 7 and a 5 step. It's really easy to turn gates on and off. It's a very performative sequencer, and they're great because they're like $99 or something. I really should get another one eventually. I've had this one since they first came out, and luckily I've never had any issues with it. But
yeah, so the SQ1, the crappy SQ1.
I have one.
I mean, $100. Geez,
It's really useful.
they're battery powered.
Yeah, they're.
Yeah.
Is it 4 AA batteries?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't used it in a while myself, but I remember it being kind of annoying with having so many AA batteries. And you have to unscrew the back to replace them.
Right. Yeah. The next part. Okay, he's going over the module, the patch cards.
you could have somebody swap out a data card. This, however, though, a lot of people may be familiar with it or may not, is a two-way program card. So the Easel originally came out in 1973. That was before the world of digital presets for the most part. So there's no way to save anything. Everything on here is an exact replica or, exact approximation of what this panel control is doing. But if I find a sound that I love, I'm going to have to remember the exact panel setting, every time I want to recreate that sound. No way to save presets, which is not a big deal. But if you do want to save presets, Don Buchla came up with this super ingenious design of giving people the ability to save these settings through using various resistors. So the resistors on here, you can see here, there's really only one. This is a very simple card that I have doing just one job. But the resistor is really analogous to the banana cable. And so what this is sending, if we follow the character over, this is random. So that's stating random voltage output. The outputs are the lines going left to right. The inputs are the holes going vertical. So what this is doing in this card is sending the random voltage into the decay of the envelope, which is something you can't do on the front panel. The envelope here has no CV inputs for the various stages of the envelope. So what this card is doing is actually twofold. It's one, giving you advanced access to features the panel does not have. And then it's also allowing you to save more or less a preset. And you can do that by using this local and remote switch. So when it's in the local mode, it's reading everything that's off of the panel. But when you put it in remote mode, it only reads what's on here. So and I'll have to pull out some later so you can get some shot of them. I have some that are completely full of resistors that is basically an entire patch on a card. You plug it in, it's got the clock speed, it's got the notes, it has everything that you would want, all saved through resistors. And so, as I was saying earlier, the resistors are kind of, an analogy of the banana cable giving you the input to the output, and then the value of that resistor, whether it be, 130, 150, whatever it might be, is actually telling you where this slider is. So if you look at the panel here, we can see that each of these has a number 0, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8 going up them. There's a key in the manual that will actually tell you what resistor value is equal to that number on the panel. So if you're trying to save a preset, you would look here and say, okay, so this is at 0. So for that input and output, I need a resistor value of, X. But if this was going to be on level 4 in my preset, then I would still use the same input and output, but I would use a different value of resistor to determine where the slider range should be. Which actually getting it spot on can be sometimes a little difficult. I've had to even stack resistors to get various weird voltages.
Korey, when was the last time you plugged resistors into your Eurorack?
I would say never.
Yeah, I mean, this is on a totally another level from anything I've had to mess with. I mean, I've seen some filters where you could swap out stuff. I don't know, not like a capacitor, but you could swap out some little components that would give the filter a different sound or noise or that kind of thing. But I mean, this is accessing parts of the synth that, you can't get to unless you have the right resistor value. It's pretty crazy.
It's really interesting to me because the closest I've gotten to that is using the Landscape FM all-flash plates, which is just basically using the human body as a CB cable to send signal.
Yeah, you're the resistor.
Yeah.
Right.
As far as I've gone.
So, starter one resistor on top of another resistor. So rather than a 6 or an 8, I want 7.5. I got to, add some extra resistors. So it's fun. It's really cool. There's some people that are really into it. And this entire system allows you to really open up and build whole new modules that are just on a card. So you'll see a lot of companies now. You can get an ornament in crime that's actually in a card. It's not this actual card. It just uses the card interface, but it's a dual ornament in crime that plugs right into the top of your easel. And then there's a company based out of Japan that makes amazing clones of other Buchla modules in card.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really cool section that I wish we could have gotten more of that in the main video, but there's only so much time. Okay, so you specifically asked him to talk about these next sections. So what was your kind of history or knowledge about these?
So he had mentioned Seattle Lombard, and I can't remember the name of the other synth company that he's about to talk about, because he's got some custom synths from the name of the damn thing is. We're about to watch it. But it was fascinating because when we were getting set up, he was telling me about all these different pieces in his studio that he has, and that some he's using more, some he's not using as much anymore. So he's showing us these unique pieces that he explains how they work, but they still are very fascinating to just think about how you would use them.
Mm-hmm. Let's check.
Again, they're custom. I believe they're custom pieces.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
It's discontinued.
Let's see.
Could you tell me a little bit about the Lorre Mill?
Yes. So due to limited space, I didn't have these set up here, but these are also another really cool part of my synth collection. A little bit more of the esoteric. And these are designed, this is called the Double Knot V2. And it's designed by a company called Lorre Mill. And this has gone through several iterations. I think they're at the V3 now. This is I think this is like the sapphire blue version of V2. The other versions The milling that you can kind of see in here is actually painted. This one is a little bit even more cryptic than the original because you don't actually have any paint in any of the grooves. So you just kind of have to see where the milling is in this plastic plate to see where everything is. But this is a really unique instrument, and it almost to me feels kind of like a baby Serge a little bit in its functionality. The way that the envelope generator, it's basically two synths that mirror each other. There's one along here and there's one along here. And the envelope generators are very similar to what you would find in a Serge. The frequency modulation is just super wild. And the patching, interconnectivity that you can do with it being in the the banana jack format, really opens it up because you can just stack and keep sending inputs and outputs all over the place. But it is a very fun instrument that is based off of dual 8-step shift registers. So there's 2 shift registers that can run independently, simultaneously. You can clock them separately, you can clock them the same, but it's very similar in the way that the shift register works to the Rungler, if you're familiar with the Rob Hordijk Rungler, or what the kind of Rungler philosophy is. You can recreate a lot of that same functionality here. So it's not necessarily something you're going to create beautiful melodies with, although you definitely could. It's very much more designed for creating interesting gate patterns using the 2 shift registers. So it's really great at creating polyrhythmic rhythms because you can alter the length of the shift register for each side and have interesting like 3 against 5 or 3 against 7 and all sorts of different varying polyrhythms and polymetric type sequences that you can kind of get out of this little box. And it's really just kind of a happy accident machine. You just kind of play around, and it's very personal as well in that everybody that does it or uses one kind of starts to develop their own little special techniques that they find do things. So I'll watch videos of people doing it. I'm like, I've never even thought of trying that, so it's a really just fun platform to explore synthesis in a way that a lot of other synths don't let you do it. It's also somewhat similar in philosophy in the way the envelope generators work to Ciat Lombardi type instruments. So Ciat Lombardi and Lorre Mill are very much on the same page in the way that their circuits actually function and interact with each other. So that's the double knot. And another one, so they still make the double knot. You can get it in the V3 version now, which actually has some really cool extra features that the version 2 that I have doesn't.
Sorry. Did we ask? Is he using these, or were they packed away temporarily, or?
No, he didn't even use them.
Mm.
They were just some unique pieces that he didn't have enough space in his studio to have set up. But
Okay.
mentioned that he had them, and I asked specifically for him to talk about them because they're unique pieces.
I see. Okay. Cool.
No, unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to plug them in,
Mhm.
but I have an open invitation to go back to his place and jam sometime.
Okay.
So hopefully,
But this other one, which is unfortunately now been discontinued, they're no longer made. I think I got this from the last batch. I heard that they were being discontinued, and I hit up. There's a noise bug. They had some of the very last batch, which I think are indicated by the white bottom. Normally there's a green bottom on these, but I believe the white bottoms were from the last batch that were made. And this is a really cool counterpart to the double knot. 'Cause the double knot, I said, is very good at creating interesting rhythms and gate patterns. It can spit out gates like no other. There's just very, very complex and interesting gate patterns. And this is its melodic counterpart, which is a gate-driven melody maker. So these 3 pads use binary logic to create your tones. So using combinations of single pads, 2 pads, or 3 pads, you can actually get 7 different tones out of this. And using these bars, you can transpose down an octave, up an octave. You can do some interesting things. So there's a lot of melodic variation between the combinations of gate patterns that you send into it. So you send gates into each of these 3 pads, or you can play them with your fingers. And so the combination of the polyrhythmic gates coming out of the double knot being sent into this give you very interesting textures of polyrhythmic rhythms against these polyrhythmic driven melodies. And it's got a great little wave folder on it. And the MOS circuit, which it gets its name, the MOS tone, is a really, really cool sound. It's just kind of hard to explain, and something you just kind of got to hear, but it has a very raspy, not clean tone by any means. It's a little bit distorted at all times, but that's kind of what gives it its sonic character. But yeah, so this is the MOS tone from Lorre Mill.
Cool. Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
We didn't get a chance to plug them in, but these, I want to hear what they sound like.
Yeah, maybe you can get some audio sample or something to share. Post about it.
I'll definitely work on that.
Do a little write up on the website or something.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I've written an article. Wow.
Good at create.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the extended scenes that we wanted to share.
How'd you feel about these shots? I think we got a good combination of using your camera and my camera to get a couple of different angles while he was talking about the Lorre Mill modules.
Yeah, I think I threw your shot just on top of these whole sections because there was a bunch of mine that was already in there, and a lot of mine I was focused on, more on his head or those sorts of things while he was talking, because I was pulling in the audio, the dialogue, so just to keep it kind of simple. But yeah, I definitely, having the two shots there worked out. I think one of the things we're going to improve on for the next one, which is coming up very soon. So the second B cam we'll use has a little more weight to it. So you should be able to get you should have a much easier time at getting a really stable shot without any of the micro jitters. Cause it's really hard to hold a DSLR out in front of you and take stable video without eventually your hands start, even something that's fairly light starts to feel heavy over time. And once you start getting the little shakes, you start fighting them, and then you tense up more, and then you shake more, and it's just you can't stop it. So yeah, on some of our clips, I had to run stabilizer just because, to clean that stuff up. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely, stuff we'll be working on. But yeah, I had a lot of fun doing this one. And I'm glad we got to show off some of these extra scenes.
So I'm really glad we got a chance to look back at some of these shots, because Musicalfungus is full of information and the knowledge about synthesizers, specifically about Buchla and Eurorack and the modules he is using with everything else. He really studies the concept of how each piece is supposed to be used, and then he's able to incorporate all those design developments to create his own sound. And it's really fascinating to listen to hear so much of how he understands each piece that he's using.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, we'll have to, I think for sure we'll have to check in again, because I think with this one, we kind of left it with he is going to make that album. Right.
I'm gonna have to make sure he gets that album out.
And then we'll interview him again afterwards.
The years we've known him, he's always telling me that he's got recordings of every jam he ever does.
Right.
So he has hours, hundreds of hours of music no one's getting to listen to.
Right.
And I know he just plugs stuff in and starts going.
Right.
As he describes, he's having a conversation with the synthesizer.
Right.
And it's always cool.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll have to somehow break into that cache of recordings. Transfer some from the reel to reel. Cool.
We didn't even get to look at the reel to reel. He even
I know.
We didn't even take it out.
Right. Yeah.
There's like we could have gone like probably could have shot up a full weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He has and the way he plays them, and the way he can and describe how they all work.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, we could definitely I think we're planning for the next one, probably using 2 days. I think we definitely could have probably done a second day too here. But I don't know how that would work. We camp out at his house or we get a hotel. I don't know.
Well, he's got a guest bed.
Right. But yeah, we could both fit in that bed, I think.
I think so. Queen size, we could play a space.
Yeah. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for doing this with me. I enjoyed looking back on the video. I've seen some parts that I forgot about. I hope everybody enjoys it too.
All right, looking forward to doing the next video for Monologs.
Good night.